Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutchy Gaming, and the next installment on the 24 Hours in POE series, well the first one, and it's covering off a Blazing Salvo character in SSF, again to get as far as I can in SSF within 24 hours of mapping time. Now, I've only done 4 hours since the last playthrough, and the reason I'm bringing out another video is the idea of this was to stream as much as possible, but work has gone absolutely mental at the moment to the point where I don't really get any consistent time to play, so it's sort of half an hour here, half an hour there, maybe an hour if I'm lucky, but not enough time to really stream. So what I thought I'd do is, rather than just bring videos out saying this is where I am, it's not really much use to you guys because you need to know how I got there. So now we're at the halfway point. I thought we'd go over the character in the second part of the video. But firstly, I thought I would go through really the first 12 hours and what my thought process was to each stage of the build and how I decided what I needed to do. So the first thing I want to cover off is prepping the build in POB is really important for any SSF build. You need to know what your character is going to look like and roughly how you're going to get there. So if, for example, you're going to start a character and you want that to be your league start type character, they need to ideally be able to get the first 2 Watchstones as a minimum, or Void Stones. So that's what I did. I basically put a POB in place with realistic gear if I was to grind, which you're going to be doing a lot of in SSF, with a build that I thought could get T16 maps, get some Guardians killed, get some Conquerors, get the first 2 Void Stones along with a couple of map favourite slots. Now, I've done this with a few builds in the past, and unless your build's indestructible, I've kind of got my benchmarks of where I want that character to be DPS-wise. And that is, with flasks up and any burst buffs, I want it to be at least 1 to 1.2 million DPS. If everything is down, I want it to be around 700k. Now, with this build, as I've never played the skill before, the POB said that's possible. In fact, it could go quite a bit further than that. But in reality, it felt totally different. And that's because with DPS in POB for Blazing Salvo, you've either got the option of 1 projectile or all of them hitting. So I've gone for all of them, assuming that on bosses that's going to happen. But it actually doesn't. Like, the majority of them hit, but some fly off outside of the AoE of the enemy unless it's got a big hitbox. So overall, the build can just about do it, I think, and I think I will get there, but I don't think it's going to be easy as I first thought. There is no point saying I'm going to run a Frostblades Raider, I'm going to level up slowly, if all you can get on realistic SSF gear is sort of 400k, 500k single target. You're not going to be able to get the pinnacle bosses down realistically. So make sure whatever build you pick is viable for an SSF start. Now, obviously, any build can be viable, but it might be that if you picked Frostblades, you are farming for days and days and days just to get gear that's capable of doing T16 maps. So the first thing after clearing a campaign is just check out how the build feels by doing your first 4 T1 maps or whatever maps you've had drop. And for the point of SSF, I think you should always take essences first. It's 4 points. You're going to start getting Screaming Essences dropping maps, which means you can start getting away from your rubbish campaign gear. But what I like to do is see how clear feels and how single target feels and how survivability feels in T1 maps. And I knew after completing the first 4 maps that I was realistically never going to be able to do even the lower tier yellow maps on this setup, and on a 4-link, it would feel really bad. I might be able to do it, but bosses would be slow, mapping would be slow. It wouldn't be fun, and I would die a lot. So you're kind of wasting time pushing map progress and you know you're going to hit a wall really soon. So straight away, as soon as I've done those first few maps, I should have said, this isn't good enough. Now I need to look at how I'm going to get my 5 or 6 link, because I do need to get that, and then I'll go and push. Now, I did stream the first 2 to 3 hours, so I actually just continued with the 4-link mapping. It wasn't particularly comfortable, but it was doable. If I would have been off stream, I would have literally done a few maps and gone, nope, this isn't good enough. And then I would have gone to address the 5 or 6 link issue. And the way I would do that in SSF is Rogue Harbor and do contracts, as any of the armor chests have a chance of dropping 6 links, and they drop 5 links all the time. Like, if you went and did highs for 1 to 2 hours, you would come out with a number of 5 links. And at the same time, I would then maybe start looking at Delve, get some Soul Fight. Are there any armor nodes in Delve? Again, 5 and 6 links are things that do drop in Delve. Obviously, 6 links are rarer, but I have had them drop. And I'll basically do this until a 5 or a 6 link drop. So that's what I did. And I spent a good 2 to 3 hours in Heist and Delve just trying to get a 5 or a 6 link. And as I said, I did get lucky and had a 6 link drop. And at that point, I was then happy to go and count my progress. But we are talking about 5 hours in at this point, and I'd maybe done 30 maps. And yeah, I'd spent most of my time farming this 5 or 6 link. The reason being, like I said, is there's no point grinding on in SSF when there's not really any time constraints just to hit a wall and then have to do exactly what I've already done. I might as well get this bit done first so that the next bit of mapping is much more comfortable. So once I've done this, I knew when I went back to mapping that I wanted to target harvest and essences. So I planned an atlas tree in POE Planner to basically get this unlocked as quickly as possible whilst taking a few map nodes. And then really it's a case then of pushing the white and yellow map completion until we get the amount of completion that I need to get all these nodes unlocked. Now, at this stage, my gear was still bad. And the reason was that I knew I could just about get through the content comfortably on the gear that I had. So I didn't want to use essences and go for like mid-tier upgrades. I wanted to upgrade all my stuff so that then I'm on to the next phase of the build, essentially, which would be like yellow and red maps. So I designed a loot filter specifically for this character, highlighting bases I wanted to craft on. And then I literally spent, I would say, a good 4.5 hours just getting in and out of any maps that I had dropped, getting the essences, getting the harvest juice. The boss, if it was close, I would kill it. But if it was something that was going to take me a couple of minutes to get there, I was just ignoring it. And that's all I was doing. I was farming that specific content to get as much currency as I can to upgrade my build. And this is something that will play part of any SSF player. Like, I have had a few people message you saying, oh, I prefer, like, I don't have as much time, so I like to chill out and do SSF. SSF is a time sink. And no matter what way you want to play it, you are spending longer in SSF gearing up by a country mile. The reason being is that you don't have the option of farming any content you want, selling that, and then buying what you need. What you need, you have to get. And a lot of the time, it might be quite difficult because you're going to need RNG to be on your side. So things like essences. Let's say I needed a big spell damage wand. Then I'm looking at one particular essence out of 15 to 20 or however many drop. So I have to farm that consistently to get lots and lots of essences so that I can then do some crafting to get the gear that I need. Same as anything, whether it's Legion, Blight, Breach, you have to farm that content until the stuff that you want drops. And I was to say, I was a good 8 to 9 hours before I even had gear that was okay. In trade, I would have had that probably after an hour or two because in terms of buying it, it wouldn't have been that expensive. I've got to this stage, I've used my essences, I've crafted the gear that will be okay. It's kind of mediocre, but it's going to be enough to get me more maps completed and get me further on in the progression. And every now and again, you might feel like you need a break from just grinding essences and you want to go back to your Atlas push. And then it's at this point, once I've got all my currency that I need for crafting, and I'm in sort of early tier red maps, is when I kind of benchmark the build. So I'll run a couple of corrupted tier 11 maps with some horrible mods on it and see how it feels. And that gives me an idea of what I need to do to get the build T16 viable. And that's the point. I'll then open my POB that I've made. I'll compare my POB to where I am, look at what items me compared to the POB is going to make the biggest upgrades, and we start targeting those. And that's what I'm going to do until I'm as close to the same or even better than the POB that I have planned, because this is the last kind of lot of farming I want to do, because then I want to take the character to T16, kill the first 2 pinnacle bosses, and then the game starts becoming fun. But if you are able to get all this done and you can see potential in progressing your build even further, as I said, this is where SSF becomes really fun. The hardest part is done, honestly. The grindy bit to get your watchstones, get your map completion done, especially if you're going on and off meta build, is an absolute chore. And at times it does feel like something that isn't worth doing. But once you get there, it is definitely worth the rewards. So in terms of the character, we'll just go through that quickly. As I say, we're at 12 hours played now, so I haven't done much more since the last video. It's only been a couple of hours, but I thought I would bring out the video, really documenting my thought process and how I go about gearing a character up, rather than just, oh, I've done another 6 hours, this is my gear, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't really help. So overall, I've not really changed any of the gear. I've got my Stygian Visors on board. I have like recrafted some gear, but there's nothing particularly different. It's just slightly better than the gear that I had. The POB will be in the description if it's something that you're interested in. The only thing I wanted to point out is last episode I mentioned that my attributes needed balancing because my intelligence was about 80 below my strength, and that was massively affecting my crit chance. So that was what these 2 hours are all about, is getting gear to balance those attributes out and trying to level up at the same time. I only managed to level up to 86 because I'm now at the point where I'm doing corrupted red maps, and they still feel pretty nasty on the build. But if we have a look at crit chance, which is what I was concerned about before, now without anything up, the crit chance is 75%. I then have my Frost Shield and my Inspiration, and I'm up to sort of 92. Put my Flask on, it's 100%. So situationally, I can get 100% crit, but even with absolutely nothing up and just Inspiration, I'm going to have a decent amount of crit. So it's 78% with Inspiration, which is really, really nice. But mapping, I'm going to have my Flask up all the time. I'm definitely going to have Inspiration. So it's now I'm much, much happier with the crit because it means some of those Arch Nemesis mods that maybe added daily resistances and stuff don't matter as much because I'm ignoring them. And I think overall, burst DPS on this build is getting up to about 3/4 mil, but that's with everything up. So I do still have work to do. My gems are still not 20. If I can get these up to 20, it's going to make a big difference, especially getting Blazing Salvo up to 20. Adds a massive chunk of DPS. I could do with a few more levels to eke out some more DPS. And then we're going to try and push for T16 maps. So next episode is going to be probably covering more time periods since we're 12 hours in now. I think the next video is going to cover the next 6 hours, and then we'll do one last video which covers the last 6 hours and then my summary and conclusion of the build and how I felt the series went. So that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.